So, by now we've all seen this. It's the new WRX, and before I go any further, I just want to say I don't dislike the version with the 6-speed powertrain, but who the hell would want a CVT in a WRX? Anyways, I don't necessarily dislike this car, as tuners are proving that this car can and will make serious horsepower for dirt cheap. But I will say I think it is easily one of the ugliest enthusiast cars on sale today. How did it get to this though? Before, Subaru WRXs and especially the STIs were revered in legend thanks to Subi gods like Colin McRae and Ken Block. But now just look at it. So, a brief history of the WRX and the STI before we get into the new one. The WRX actually started its life as a trim level. Before it became its own car, it was a trim level for the Impreza. It started in 1992 when the WRX trim was first offered, and it was actually not half bad, even though it wasn't an STI. See, it still came with a center diff that you could variate how locked you wanted it, which helped make sure you were as fast as humanly possible, even on slippery surfaces. There's more though, as it also, in addition to the center diff, used a rear LSD, which also helps with cornering and making sure it goes fast. Pair all of that with the standard turbo flat 4 that was putting out 236 horsepower and a 5-speed manual, and you can see why these sold like hotcakes the second they hit the market. This wasn't all though, as there was a Type RA trim for the WRX. Think of it as the STI before the STI. This is a hyper rally focused WRX, as it stripped out creature comforts like AC, ABS, the windows were cranked, the weight savings was taken so seriously they didn't even come with a horn. But it gets better, as 2 years later in 1994, Subaru dropped the WRX STI in Japan only, making them at a rate of about 100 per month. They got a horsepower bump up to 256 horsepower, and that power came courtesy of a turbo 2-liter flat 4. In addition, the STI got the same all-wheel drive system as the base WRX, and with that, it became an instant JDM cult classic. The flat 4 under the hood became world-renowned for its tunability, and because of it, the STI became known for killing supercars, muscle, Euro. It didn't matter. Now, skipping over a lot of history, like the WRX hitting US shores for the first time with the second-gen Impreza. The WRX became its own standalone model and not just a trim level for the first time in 2014. The base WRX kept the same formula as every WRX before it. All-wheel drive, turbo flat 4, and making sure it was an absolute bullet. In the Japanese market, the WRX, not even the STI, just the WRX, was making 296 horsepower, whereas everywhere else, the WRX made 268, because God forbid any cool car ever leaves the shores of Japan for the rest of the world to enjoy. Now, that's not to say that the WRX was perfect, as I am kind of neglecting an elephant in the room. You could get these things in an automatic, except it wasn't a real automatic. It was worse. It was a CVT. Quick sidetrack for those that don't know, CVT stands for continuously variable transmission. Now, whether a transmission is automatic or manual, it has gears. A CVT, however, has no gears. It uses a bell and pulley system to make the literal perfect gear ratio to take account for literally any scenario. And on paper, it may seem better than a standard auto or manual in terms of performance, until you actually put it into practice in any road car and realize whether it be a WRX, a Can-Am Renegade, or anything else, the belts in these things love to self-destruct. And most CVTs have a track record of being absolute pieces of crap. In addition to the CVT issues, the motors in a concerningly large amount of these are known for going through head gaskets thanks to the engine being a Boxster. As because of that, coolant would be coming into contact with the head gaskets when the engine was off. And if the engine got a little too hot or ran a little too low on oil, there was potential for the head gaskets to fail. With that being said though, meme culture has kind of blown it out of proportion, as it's really not that often that it happens. Anyways, back to the WRX. For the WRX's first time as a standalone model, Subaru wanted to make sure that the performance trim, the STI, was going to be special and stand out. And believe me, it did. The VA STI used an EJ257 engine, which is still keeping with the turbo flat 4 mentality, specifically a now 2.5-liter flat 4, making 305 horsepower and 290 pound-feet of torque, which in this little thing made sure it absolutely ripped. And rip it did, as it became the fastest sedan around the Nürburgring. Technically, not really, as the car they used is similar to what Porsche does, modify everything and then call it a road car. Anyways, to commemorate the Nürburgring lap time, Subaru even came out with a, what's this, a USDM exclusive from Subaru?
It's enough to make a grown man cry, and that's okay. You go right ahead, T.
That's a first. It's the Type RA making a return. This one is not like its Impreza WRX ancestor though, as it kept the majority of its creature comfort, and honestly, it was more just Subaru digging up a nameplate as an excuse to make a collector's car. But that's not to say that it didn't come with cool parts like a carbon fiber roof and wing, Bilstein front struts, and lightweight BBS wheels. The VA WRX and STI stayed in production until the end of 2021, when around the same time, September to be specific, Subaru announced the second-gen WRX, the VB, to collective moans and groans from the automotive community, myself included. See, mine and a lot of other people's biggest issue with the new WRX was the exterior design and those dumb plastic trim pieces that manufacturers are putting on every crossover. It gets more frustrating though, as it was later announced that there would be no STI variant coming out for the US. On paper, this was due to emission regulations changing so quickly that the new STI would have a short shelf life. Definitely not at all, because everyone and their mother would rather gouge out their eyes with the dullest butter knife they could find rather than spend any longer than absolutely necessary looking at it. Who knows though, to be fair, STIs, both Subaru and the other kind, are kind of one and the same if you really think about it. If you have it, it's a massive pain to deal with, and don't even think about doing anything to make it better, as you'll only be left in more pain than when you started. And for all my ladies out there, if you're seeing a man with either type of STI, it's usually a good sign you gotta start reconsidering your dating choices and events in your life that have brought you to this point. But believe me, it gets worse, as Subaru later announced that there would be an STI coming out, but it was for Japan only. And on top of all that, they said they would be marketing more towards a general audience instead of enthusiasts, despite the fact that for the previous generation of the VA, they sold 80% of all their cars with a manual transmission, and for whatever reason, Subaru wanted to switch that. It also keeps the CVT, and the CVT is the only transmission option in the top trim level GT, which comes with Recaro seats and electronic dampers. What a dumb car. What enthusiast wants a performance car with the CVT that's not the old Williams F1 car? How much more brain dead does it get? It's so far really not looking good for this car. Now, me personally, out of principle, I don't ever plan on owning this car, as Subaru effectively told enthusiasts to pound sand when they said no STI. But if you find yourself looking at one and thinking you want one, it's really not all bad news. First off, the new WRX gets a power bump over the last gen up to 271 horsepower and 258 pound-feet of torque. It has a pretty nice interior too, and also gets electronically controlled dampers, which for any car is really good, but especially a WRX paired with the center diff and all-wheel drive system can and probably will make this a serious rally or track threat. And the main reason I made this video is that the tuning capabilities may be really damn serious. See, the WRX hasn't been out for that long, so we don't know for sure, but what we do know for certain is that this 2.4 liter flat 4 in this WRX can already make very serious power. There are shops out there showing dyno proof of them making 350 to 400 horsepower on stock everything in 93. Just a tune, that's it. If this can handle a bigger turbo with more boost, we may be looking at an engine that might be able to go toe-to-toe with the 2.5 TFSI. I know, that's a very tall order, and we won't know for certain until probably years from now, but the early signs are very promising. Then again though, they were also pretty promising in the 2.3 EcoBoost, and look how that turned out. Actually, funny enough, pretty similar to the past STIs, both just absolutely go through head gaskets. Now keep in mind, this is just the engine, as the transmission is almost identical to the last gen WRX, and those are pretty widely known for self-destructing after roughly 370 horsepower. So good luck if you do manage to make 400 in one of these, as you may need a new transmission afterwards. But still, nearly 400 on pump gas. Imagine what it can do FBO and on E85. There could be some pretty crazy times ahead for the WRX. Sometimes that maybe, just maybe, we can look forward to, or maybe not. Maybe after 400 horsepower, the entire thing shreds itself into oblivion, and the WRX isn't a great tuner car. It doesn't matter, because Subaru is literally breaking records with this car in terms of sales. So this car is only reinforcing Subaru to make more crap cars. Maybe this is the end of the WRX as we've known it. Who knows? Only time is gonna tell.